All right, welcome to the Nature Journal Club. I'm John Muir Laws, and today I'm going to be teaching you folks about how to draw waves, whales, and other marine mammals. So right now is a really, really good time to get out on the water. If you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, Sanctuary Cruises is a great, low-cost, high-quality whale watching trip that you can get on that is right out of Moss Landing Marina. And you really owe it to yourself. You see these movies about, nature documentaries with whales kind of breaching and kind of doing all this crazy stuff. You think, gosh, I've got to go on a long trip to do that. It's actually happening right off your coast. There are blues and minkies and humpbacks and orca, the sea panda. There are sea panda right off the coast right now. It is wonderful. And what I want to do is, first of all, encourage everybody to do it. Get out there, bring your journals, sketch up a storm, and it will be a memorable experience. Very often people they're never a tourist in their own backyard because these resources are kind of close and accessible to us. We don't go. So what I'm going to suggest is go, and you'll see why. I cannot overhype it, but I'm going to show you some stuff. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how to draw whales. When you see whales, you're going to be seeing part of them above the surface. It actually helps to really understand how the whole whale looks underneath the water. And so what we'll do is to start, we will understand kind of what the generic whale looks like, and we're going to do that by looking at the structure of 4 whales that you can find off the Pacific coast. So we'll be looking at minke whales and blue whales and humpback whales and gray whales. And you'll see kind of what the similarities and the differences are between those and what's kind of some range of the variation within those. And we'll give you an idea of kind of how the basic whale is put together. And then we'll look at when the whale comes up to the surface, what are the parts that you're seeing? And understanding how the big whale underneath really helps you understand this progression of things that you'll see. So you get some really different views as the whale comes up to breathe or when it's coming up to sort of go for a big deep dive. So we'll take a look at how that looks, and then we'll turn attention to the cuteness of seals, sea lions, and the sea otter for you. All right? So here we go. We are going to start our drawing of the whale. There we go. What I do is I'm going to start by lightly on my paper drawing 4 ovals. The whale body is fairly linear. On one page I'm going to be stacking 4 different whales together. This one here is going to be my blue whale. It's really not to scale with the other whales. Blue whale, if it were fully in here, its nose would start in here, its tail would be somewhere over here. It just would not fit on my screen. So I made the mini blue whale so we can look also at its structure. So all of these are going to be baleen whales. And those are the whales that will be most common off our coast here in California. I'm going to put over these ovals a kind of outline that gives you the basic shape of these different whale forms. This top one here is the minke whale, and it has a very sharp snout. A fairly small whale, very long, very narrow, extremely streamlined thing. The humpback whale, a couple of things to notice about it. There's sort of we're going to have more of a scoop on the underside of its head, and a fairly blunt face, a blunt nose out here. The blue whale, first of all, is going to be huge, but the blue whale's head on the top, it's not going to be as steep an angle as it is here on the bottom. Other thing to notice is that these whales here, the back end here really tapers. On the blue whale, this part here is really thick. So there's no real taper on the blue whale. So when you see those come down and the last thing that comes up is the tail, you'll see this big, thick stalk of the tail going right into the fluke. The fluke is the name for the fin that's on the back of the whale. And here is my gray whale. The gray whale's head is much more kind of blunt and very rounded. It kind of looks like it's been banging against the aquarium wall a little bit too much. So they've got a more blunt, rounded face. So this one is going to be blue, and this will be the gray. Take a look at this animation made by... And you'll notice that kind of from this point back, that's where most of the motion is. It's not up here in the front part of this whale.
Which one is that?
This is a humpback. All right, so let's see that again. Notice that the motion is all here. Most of the motion is behind that line,
Wow.
right? There's a little bit of there'll be some undulation in this front part, but the real action of this thing swimming is going to be back here. Take a look at these videos right here. You'll see the whale go by fairly still, and then there's the motion part, right?
That's what you see.
And watch, the back bends, the front stays pretty still. That's where the movement is. It's kind of cool, so whale tails, they go this way, up and down. So sharks and fish, that's a side-to-side motion. And you know why it is that whale tails have this motion and fish are like that? It's just a fluke. Yes, sir.
I know why it goes down and up.
Oh, tell me.
Because on the shark, the tail goes up, and then this one is flat down.
That's good. So he's saying he's saying that when you look at the shark from the side, the tail is going to be that way. He's saying you look at the whale from the side, its tail is going to be like that. So he's absolutely right. Good. So from these, I'm going to put in some of the front flipper, right, which is called the pectoral fin. So these are your pectoral muscles. Your front, this is your pectoral fin is the one that's up here in the front. And what I usually do is I lightly sketch in the location of it. So I don't want it too far back. I don't want it too far forward. So look at how far back these come in. And they're going to be different sizes with different whales. Once I've kind of got them roughly blocked in, take a look at the different shapes of these. For the minke, it's this very long, narrow pectoral fin. In contrast with that is the humpback, which has these huge, huge pectoral fins. Sometimes the pectoral fins of the humpback are completely white. When they jump out of the water, they wave their pectoral fins through the air. Some people call them sea angels because they've got these huge wings, right? And so you think of these giant wing-like pectoral fins with a little bit of a curve to them. They're often kind of warty and lumpy and bumpy. So warty, lumpy, bumpy angel wings. The blue whale, its peck is going to start a little bit higher on its body, but it's fairly long. And the gray whale has a short little round one. Everything's very rounded on the gray whales. So when we look at the tail from the underside, you'll notice two different forms. Some I call the T, right? So this is narrow side to side. So these are narrow little tails. And then there's the Y. Right? These are broader, deeper ones. So the minke has a very sort of top to bottom, a skinny little tail. Same with the blue whale. While the humpback and the gray whale have one that is deeper this way. So each whale, each whale species, when you get to see their fluke come up, when they're doing a big dive and they're about to head down for a long dive, that fluke will come up. If you get behind them as they're going down, you'll get to see the shape of that. And some of them, like the humpback, have very distinct individual patterns on the underside of the tail. So just like your thumbprint is something special to you, if you want to tell humpback whales apart, you look at the underside of their tail. And they show that to you right when they go down, and every humpback has a different pattern. And so worldwide, scientists keep a database of photographs of the tails of humpback whales. And you can keep track of the travels of individuals, where this one shows up in Alaska, then here it is by Cabo. Wherever it is going around, you'll be able to track that whale by the patterns on the underside. Generally speaking, on humpbacks, it's a white tail with a light line around it, and then that gets progressively filled in until you're making these sort of ovals on either side that become little eyes, to slits, to spots, to completely dark. But you want to look at what is the general shape of the of those white parts, and then you're looking for, oh, this one has a black line that goes like that, there's a dot here, there's a bump here, there's a spot there. A strategy you might use when you're out whale watching is that when you see there's a humpback in front of you, is to quickly sketch out a generic humpback whale tail, and then you're waiting for the dive, and when it dives down, you would then boop, get in there and sketch in the patterns that you see. So the generic whale tail, again for the humpback, is going to be a big Y. This one looks skinnier because it's a foreshortened view. And then what you're going to do is go up on the tips. So it goes up on the tips, and it's going to have a notch here, so there's my whale going down, and then I'm waiting for that to dive, and go like, oh, okay, it's got this pattern here, and there's a little spot here, and like that. Yes?
How do you sketch the whale when you're outside because the whale is moving?
So that's a great question. I know that the whale is going to come through, what we're going to do is we're going to sort of understand the big structure of the whale, and then we're going to learn that there are certain parts of the whale that it puts above the water that I will regularly be able to see. And when I see those, I'll have a strategy kind of knowing what I should expect to see and how to approach that. So for instance, with this tail, that's one way of doing it. Knowing that when it dives, that big tail is going to come up, and at that point I'll be able to sketch it so I can get in the basics of my whale tail shape. And then when that whale goes away, or when that tail comes up, I'll be ready to get in. I don't have to draw everything on that tail. I just will be able to drop in the pattern that I see. Did that answer your question? Great, very good question. So let's put some mouths in with our whales. The mouth is going to come in higher on the head, so it's closer to the top. And it has this little zigzag down. The eye then sits down in that space there. A little bit less of a zig with the gray whale here. The humpback has this big swoosh down under its eye. And now I'm going to just put in a few other details on the whales that will help you pick out individuals. We'll start up here with the minke. On this whale, on the minke whale, it has a big crescent moon dorsal fin. So very distinct crescent moon dorsal fin. On the humpback whale, I typically get what I call the sloped mesa. So a mesa is a hill with a flat top. So if you think of the Southwest, you have these hills like that, right? So there's a little Southwest mesa. So if I take a little mesa here, but I cut off part of it here, so it's got a sloped angle, right? That's the sloping mesa humpback. And it confuses some people, because sometimes people will see this little bit kind of sticking up here, and they'll say like, oh, look, that's the shape of its dorsal fin right there. But really when you look for it, you'll see this whole little mesa. We'll see some videos and photographs of those in a minute. And you'll be able to see that, like, oh, when you're looking for this whole mesa look, you can pick that out. Humpback whales also have very warty faces. There are these bumps, these tubercles on their faces that I guess are hair follicles sticking up all over their forehead, all over their chin, sometimes giving them this kind of Kirk Douglas look right here. This kind of big chin look. Also, they'll have warts and bumps along their tail. They will get a few barnacles too on their bodies, but a lot of these very prominent bumps on their face and the fin and the fluke. And a few barnacles out here. The blue whale, you're not going to find barnacles on the blue whale. The blue whale looks like it's airbrushed. Just this perfectly smooth, kind of dolphin smooth, big thing. Notice again, this very thick stalk here, instead of tapering down, just chunky back to this. They have a little bit of a crescent back here, not as prominent, not as big as you'll get in your minke. And then the gray whale, on its dorsal fin, instead of a fin that sticks up, there's a bump. And behind that bump are a bunch of knuckles. So you see bump, knuckle, 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 knuckle. You sometimes get a few knuckles back here in a humpback, but more prominently, more regularly, all the time, you're going to see that right here in a gray whale. So they have the knuckle back. Gray whales also have tons of barnacles all over their faces. And where those fall off, they'll make little white spots, giving them really blotchy skin. So that's a few characteristics of some of our off-the-coast whales here. Who's this one?
Gray whale.
What would you say?
I was going to say gray whale.
Gray whale? Gray whale? We go for gray. Yep. And how'd you know?
Barnacles.
So, crazy barnacles all over here. You can see all these places where patches of barnacles will come off. What part of the whale do you think we're looking at? What part of the whale do you think?
The head.
The head? Do you know which one this one might be?
Humpback.
And what's the clue you're using?
All the warts on its face.
Boom. Take this man whale watching. Alright, here's another view of the humpback. You can see those bumps here on the face, a little bit of that scoop here. Some barnacles on there. Their skin gets also, sometimes there are all sorts of little marine critters that will just get stuck to them. They're a little ecosystem floating around in the ocean there. Alright. On the underside of the head, whales have grooves, little pleats, that allow when they take a big gulp of water, their throat to expand. For the blue whale, the amount of water in there can be about the equivalent to what you get in a school bus. So a lot of water can get in there. Take a look on the underside of this blue whale. So see that really smooth skin? A little bit of modeling, but very smooth, airbrushed skin. Those are those pleats that allow that underside to expand. Can anybody name this species? What do you call it?
Humpback.
And what were your clues?
The bumps on its face and the big fins.
This one's like angel, right?
Yeah. I'm flying.
Right? So big angel fins on this way. Yeah, absolutely. There's a big humpback. And look at those grooves going down, stopping about halfway down that belly there. Right? Now, if we put colors on these, humpbacks, let's just go back to that humpback. Right? Humpbacks think of them as being mostly dark, but there's a lot of variation in on them. So a humpback will often be very dark with then some white highlights on it. So when its back comes up, you'll often be looking at just this black mass that just popped out of the water. And different individuals, just like there's all that variation in the humpback tails, different individuals will have different amounts of white on them. So some can have completely white pectoral fins, or really white bellies. So there are different sorts of things that you're going to see on different humpback whales. Right? but they often look just blotchy and marked. They often will be scarred. There will be barnacles. There will be all these hitchhikers on them. Again, they're the little ecosystem swimming around. Compare that to the airbrushed blue whale. Right? The blue whale, right, is going to be really smooth body, often a little bit of modeling in that pattern, but it doesn't look, it'll look neat and clean, shiny. The gray whale is also a bit messy. So their skin scars white very, very easily, so you have all sorts of white marks and scars on them. Sometimes even motorboat propeller marks will be, you can see those on their back, poor little critter. But other scratches, if a barnacle pops off, the barnacle will leave a little white scar. Also, barnacles crusted all over their face. Yes?
Any idea why the barnacles don't like the blue whales?
I don't know. Since I was doing this talk, a bunch of people have been asking that question. Maybe if there's anybody who's listening on the video who knows, what is it about different species of whale that makes the texture of their skin such a great habitat for critters and others not?
Did it go deeper?
I don't know. I don't know. It'd be really interesting. I know that the blues go really, really deep. So what is up with being an ecosystem? And is there a problem that you get by that creating drag, making it more difficult to swim? Is there any advantage to the whale? I'd love to learn more about that. So if anybody watching the video has some information about that, please include it in the comments. Lastly, the minke. The minke whale is a gorgeous little whale. All right. There'll be variable black and white patterns, but instead of being blotchy black and white like a humpback, it looks like somebody airbrushed them. Right? Sometimes with swirls or curlicues of darks and whites going through their body. They will regularly have a white patch on their pectoral fin. So when you see that little thumbprint, go minke. Right? Crescent, a moon, tail, minke. Right? They're also a small little whale, minke. Right? And so we could fit a minke from head to tail in this room. Right? The blue whale would be out past the parking lot. Right? So, little guy, big guy, not to scale. But when these things come up, so this is what's going on underneath the water. When they come up to the surface, the first thing that comes up is going to be their head to breathe. So this is this critter's blowhole. So when it first comes up, like that photograph you saw of the head of the humpback, the water level will be here and this part of their head will be sticking out. And then they breathe, and their back rolls, and you'll see this part of the body. And then they go down, and if they're doing a really a shallow dive, you'll see a little bit of the back and they disappear. But if they're doing a deep dive, what happens is the body bends and flexes here. So imagine the tail pushing down here. Right? And that pushes the nose down, the back up, and you get a water line like this. Let me transfer this picture to vertical here. If this is my water, you then will get this really kind of high back. Here is here's my little mesa dorsal fin. So you'll get this sort of very high back. It'll come up, see a lot of back with a little dorsal fin on it, and that means it's about to come down, and the last thing you see is the flukes. Right? So when you see the high back, get ready, get ready, get ready. What's the pattern on the tail going to be? So that means when you're looking at these from the surface, you don't see the whole thing. You might see something like, for a humpback, something like this. All right, so here's the spout, here's some back. Sometimes you'll see, here's some head with the spout, and then you'll just see back. Pen is dying. Okay. This is that posture when they kind of are about to go down for a big dive. Right? And you see that little mesa fin? Different whales also have different shaped spouts. The blue whale has a big vertical spout. Humpbacks and gray whales will often have these kind of heart-shaped spouts. So they've got two blowholes, each at a slightly different angle, and they'll go, and it makes this heart. You don't see that if you're looking at the whale from the side, but from the front or the back, if the wind's not blowing too hard, it makes a little heart shape. Blue whales, they're pointed a little bit closer towards each other. It's a big vertical jet. Right? So part of what you want to do is change your expectation of what a whale drawing in the field should look like, from I'm going to draw the whole whale, to I'm going to draw which part of the whale is showing me. And the first time you see it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, there's a lump sticking out of the water. But if you know that there are going to be these regular things, like there's going to be my blowhole, I might have a blowhole with back, I can get just back, I can get back with dorsal fin or back with dorsal fin, right? Or this is right before a dive. These are very typical postures that you see at the surface of the water. So first, I'm about to show you a video of humpback whales. Oh, I shouldn't have told you. See if you can figure out what kind of whales. Some kind of whales. And what I want you to do is just sort of notice when you're seeing these different postures, right? And if you notice the posture, that gives you some real leverage in being able to get that down into your sketch. Sort of see what you get here. So there's blow, there's back, right? This is lunge feeding. They're gaping their mouth and getting all sorts of fun to eat, tasty treats. So blow, back, right? See just back. Dorsals, see the mesa? Right? And down. Thank you for the underwater cam. Right? Let's see this again. So blow, back. What do you think is going to happen next?
Tail.
Watch this. Blow. All right. Then see how that goes up? What's going to happen next?
Tail.
And then you're going, oh, white spot on that side, right? You're there waiting for that. What's going to be the pattern? You see that back arch up, you know, here comes the tail. Right? Now we're going to take a look at this again. So that's part of what you're doing there is you're kind of getting the shape. You want to recognize those postures, and you can sketch that shape. So as you're watching whales, you'll be drawing some shapes on there. The next thing you want to do is draw the water around them. Right? And it turns out if you go like this, or this, these are symbols that we have that mean water, but if you notice, this isn't happening here. Right? This isn't happening here. So what we're going to do is we're not going to use these symbols. We're going to look at some other ways of suggesting that there's water around them to make your water look more watery. To do that, let's take a look at the video one more time. And I want you just to notice when you're looking at water, it's very confusing because it's constantly moving. So how on earth do I draw that? I'm not looking at the edge of it. I'm looking out over the surface of it. It's going back in space. I'm seeing waves closer to me, bigger here, waves further away, smaller back here. And I'm not seeing as much detail back here. Notice that you're seeing little dark lines, little dark horizontal lines where those waves kick up. Where those waves kick up. Here we go. So, little dark horizontal wavelets here. So how do I draw water that is going to suggest that effect? Here's one approach. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some sort of background tone in here so people will see this as the surface of the water. So I'm not looking at the edge of the water. In order to see the edge of the water, you'd actually have to get down in the water with your eye right half in, half out of the water. Right? If I'm above it looking down, I see it as a floor, as a surface going out underneath you. So I'm not looking at the edge of water. The only edge I might be able to see might be a distant horizon. Right? So I've got some tone here on the ground that goes from darker to lighter. Often you'll see things get a little bit paler towards the horizon. Not always. Sometimes you'll see it actually get darker towards the horizon. So you actually want to look at whatever horizon you're seeing. But this is something you'll often see. A little bit of haze, a little bit of fog, and you'll definitely get that. So then, I'm going to put in a few dark marks on the water, suggesting those little horizontal wavelets. So notice that these are bars kind of going this way, and they're kind of are starting skinnier and getting bigger. All right? And compare these ones in this section with these ones in this section. What's one difference you see between the ones at the bottom, the foreground, versus the ones in the back? Tell me one difference you see.
There's more detail. Well, there's more detail on the bottom.
So more detail down here, like this one has a little wavy top. I'm getting none of that up here. What else? Good. Yeah.
They get less, they blend more into the water in the background and they're more stark with,
Yes.
more contrast in
Good.
the foreground.
Exactly. Yeah, the term's contrast. She says there's more contrast here than there. Absolutely right. Perfect. Any other differences you see? Yes?
That closer to the closer in the picture, the darker black is.
Good. The value, these are dark, these are light. All right? Big, small. So just by, in one of these, I have kind of a slight wave look to it. The rest of these are just some blotches. But people see that one wave and some bigger blotches going back into smaller blotches. People will interpret that as being water surface going back. Then I'm going to, I want this to suggest waves. I also want my whale to suggest something that is in waves. If a whale came up on a surface and the line between the whale and the water was perfectly straight like that, what would that suggest about the surface of that water?
It would be very calm.
Is that what you're going to say?
No, in the video, I saw like the water was like splashing everywhere because the whale was like splashing its body and stuff, so it's making like kind of waves
Yes.
around the whale.
Good. So she's saying you want some waves there around the whale. This straight bottom doesn't look like whale in waves. It looks like whale in Lake Placid. Right? So what if I just, here's without, I'm just going to make the bottom level edge of this a little bit irregular. See that? And it then feels like this could be in wavy water. If it's a more windy day and you've got white caps, if I put in a few little white marks in the foreground, that is also going to suggest that you've got water. So people see this. I haven't really drawn in detailed water, but I've got big marks going to little marks, getting lighter, a few white caps in the foreground. People see that, it'll feel like water. So I want to get rid of this symbol. The secret for successful water is to make your watermarks regularly irregular. Right? Consistently inconsistent. Right? I don't want the same mark again and again and again. If I've got a wave like this and I repeat it again and again and again, the same size, it's not going to feel like water. But big one, small one, medium size, tiny one. That kind of irregularity is going to feel much more natural. It's going to feel more like water. So consistently inconsistent. So this is a little bit more consistently inconsistent, but it's still kind of saying water. I'm going to show you a line style that I make that I often bring into a lot of the water that I draw. And when I first put it up on the screen, you'll say, okay, but it still doesn't look like water. All right, but bear with me and we'll sort of turn it, and you'll see how it turns into something that looks more watery. All right, here it is. The way I make this line is, what I do is I come along and I go up, and I start with, I'm kind of coming up, down, sometimes shorter, back and forth. I go back and forth, and sometimes I'll see how some of these are closed shapes. I'll kind of, you can close some of them off. Try not to make a perfect star. All right, but your pencil's going back and forth, right? And not all the same length, zigzag. Right? So that little mark, I'm now going to put that. Marks like this, or here's one that, here's a little separate one. I'm going to put those marks up around this whale. So that starts to look watery. A little bit closer to water. Look at how much better it looks. But notice that with that straight edge of the whale, that's fighting against the suggestion of waves. So your brain's going, what's going on here? All you have to do is then turn the bottom edge of that into an irregular line, and it feels like waves that are kind of splashing up against the side of the whale. And if I'm making my whale body dark, right, that's really easy to do. I can start with something that's just like this, and then just take more of my dark and kind of push it down into here in a consistently inconsistent line. So if I just want to keep it as a line drawing, I can stop right there. That actually feels kind of consistently watery. If I want to put some tone in it, I can push this a little bit further. I can here put a little bit of tone behind this, going darker to lighter. And then I'm going to pick a few of these shapes that I've created and partially or completely fill those in with dark. And then that feels like it kind of helps me get this kind of consistently inconsistent thing going on. One last little thing that I can do if I really want to tweak this is often when you're looking at waves going across the water, there will be the big set of waves, the swells, and then there'll be gusts of wind over the surface of that. So if I have wind gusting over the top of these swells, the swells will continue, but there'll be these patterns of little micro ripples blowing across the surface of those waves. They're not always going at the same angle. So the prevailing wind direction will set up a direction of the swells. And then going randomly across that will be these swirling, twirling gusts of wind. So what I will often do is make a little sets of some little parallel lines, being little microwavelets. Microwave. So here are my microwaves. Kind of across some of those. So here's without, here's with it. So in some of those sort of flat areas there, I'm just going to put in a little suggestion of a smaller set of wavelets in those. Not as bold, not as dark, not as prominent, but that really kind of helps fill in some of the kind of the chaos of that water surface. And this would be a day not too windy. If it gets higher on the Beaufort wind scale, you start to get white caps developing, you can drop in some white caps. Again, consistently inconsistent. And if your body of your whale really doesn't stand out enough from your water, then you can put some white caps or some foam right at the edge of those two things too. That's a strategy, that's an approach that I find successful for suggesting water. Right? And that can be applied to lots of different media. If you're using watercolor to suggest your waves, a tool that I strongly suggest is a flat brush, particularly the Kuretake water brush, their flat water brush. Does anybody have any of those in the room?
I don't have a flat water brush. I have a
Got a regular one? So that's the round. And so this is one that comes to a chisel tip. And I'll show you a picture of it in a minute. And what it's going to allow me to do is very kind of quickly, in a gestural way, make marks that kind of have a little bit of the chaos of water. And what I do with this brush is I just go back and forth with this, not the broad part of it. So if my fingers here are the tip of the brush, so it's like a chisel, rather than painting this way, I turn it on its side and I'm kind of cutting with it like this. Some lines down this way, then this way, or kind of chick. Right? You can cut this chisel-tipped brush back and forth across the page. And it makes for very kind of convincing sort of randomness of wave marks. One way to use this is to first put down one coat. Here's just some washes. And then when I get into the foreground, I want to get more action going on. I want more sort of dynamic stuff. Then it starts kind of cutting back and forth more, and I'm letting some of the white of the paper show through. I let this dry and mix up some darker paint. And with that same chisel brush, come back into it and cut back and forth across the surface, you can still see here how you get the sense of little waves on top of bigger waves. That's a couple of strategies for water. If you're drawing on a boat, it's good to have several drawings all going at the same time. So as the boat's going out, start drawing just views of water before you see any whales. Then you see a whale, you can draw your whale right on top of your water. Or you can get something like this on the page, some just sort of areas of tone of different colors. Let those dry as you're sitting there, and then when you see your whale, you want to turn that into more of a picture, you draw on top of that, and you can continue, you already have your base coat down. You can then work over it. And you don't have to, if you know, sometimes whales are very long. Let's say you've got a vertical drawing, like this is your drawing of water. Here's my horizon, and I've got my water. Kind of a fun thing you can do, you see a whale come up and breach. Let's say it's in the middle ground somewhere, but it's so big that it wouldn't fit on your thing. You don't have to draw water all the way over there. Just take that whale as you're seeing it and kind of put it at the appropriate height. And it looks like this thing is swimming into your other drawing. That's going to be a lot of fun. You don't have to draw as many waves. Now it's time for, let's play with whales and water just a little bit. So, a little bit of an arch in that fin. Is this a big animal or a small animal?
Big.
Yeah, you look at the size of these little wavelets here. It suggests there's something massive here. A little bit of modeling up here. I like this wave breaking right against its side. Anybody take a guess what kind of whale?
Is it a blue whale?
That's a blue whale. Is that what you're going to say? Yep, blue whale. Now let's take a look at the water here. Look at the shape of those water marks. See, those, by water marks I mean those black marks in the water. What I want you to do is just pick out one or two of these, and you're going to draw the watermark on your paper. So for instance, if I were to pick this one here, I have something that comes along as a line, goes down, and then I've got something that comes in here and out like that. That's the shape of that watermark. This one here comes up, over, and down out to a little point. This one here has a big kind of point over on this side, and then it's going to come out here, and maybe there's another point here. So water's going to do whatever water does, and what you want to do is to look from photographs at some kind of stopped positions of waves and collect a few just watermarks. Collect a few watermarks in your journal. So pick one or two of these and draw them into your journal. It turns out that if you have just some blotches, horizontal linear blotches, notice that most of these are lines going this way. If you have some linear blotches on your page and you put one or two marks in the foreground that kind of look like a wave pattern, something that water would do, people will see that whole thing as water. So for quick water, one or two wave marks in the front, and then you can have some horizontal linear blotches behind. People will read that as water. So anytime you see a photograph of water, look for some interesting wave marks in it and copy those into your journal. And what will happen is you will replace the symbol in your head of how water should look with things that are more useful and for suggesting the surface of water. Ready for another whale ID? Name that whale. You know this one? Everybody together. 1, 2, 3.
Kitty!
Very good. There's our beautiful Mickey. Look at this is my favorite part here, the little swoosh stripe, this little Cupid doll thing going on right there. Oh, right? So pectoral fin, that white spot on it, pointed. Here's that really crescent moon,
Yeah.
right?
All out of the water.
Isn't that great? So yeah, these ones are really acrobatic. They'll just jump out. Look for this now, it's choppier water. Look for a couple of really good wave marks here. That's a nice one there, look at that, right? So, you're just sort of getting your brain to say, waves can do that. Or there's a neat one.
Yeah, that one looks like a classic wave.
Yeah, and it also is kind of tied to this one. You'll notice that the bottom edge of it is often a little bit more faintly defined. Darker towards, more crisper near the top.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How would you draw that white splash behind its tail?
White splash behind the tail is going to be, there's several different ways to approach it. One is if you're using toned paper. When I go out whale watching, I'll often be sketching on toned paper. That way I can get out my white pencil and add splashes and white caps and white marks and reflections with a stroke of a pencil. Otherwise, you're having to kind of work around it. If you're trying to show this with line, you might have a drawing of your, let's say here's your whale. You'd have something that you'd make kind of a broken line here saying, look, there's a splash here. And you can even add like comic book sound effects, splash. Use writing and drawing to explain what's going on your page. If you're using tone, you would make this area dark and you can either leave it white or get a fine eraser like a Mono 0 and come in here and erase out some of these little patterns and textures. With watercolor, you could have a background of one color and either work around it, which would be hard, or use white gouache paint or a gel pen to put those in. So all of those would be strategies that you could get white, a white splash going on to your page. I love sketching on a piece of toned paper. And they make some toned paper sketchbooks. They also make sketchbooks that have well, you can also just cut out pieces of toned paper, put those in a little envelope and carry it with you. And when you want, pull one of those out. And when you get back on the mainland, glue them into your book. Name that whale. Isn't that? That's kind of sort of a Wayland moment there.
Yeah.
What would this guy be? What do you think?
Humpback.
You're right. What clues were you using?
The lumpy fins.
Lumpy
and
fins?
The white on it.
Sort of white, mottly, scratchy, lumpy fins, and a big fin too. Nice. So again, look at the watermarks. So dark marks on a light surface. Who's that? Minky? What clues are you looking at?
It's white belly. It's like stark white. And
Stark,
there's so much of it.
clean white belly, sort of clean black and whites. What are some other minky clues here?
Small.
Yeah, small pectoral fins. Yeah.
That it's jumped all over.
Yeah.
It's Arab. It's whoo, right. We've got the T-shaped tail here, and look at these little pectoral fins with the white spot on them. Right.
And it's very pointed, it's like nose point.
It's like a bullet.
Yes, really streamlined little thing. And so here, not quite as clean. Who could this be? Yeah.
A gray whale.
A gray whale? You're right. So, and notice here that the watermarks, some nice watermarks here, are green on a blue surface. Right? They're darker green. So if you're doing this with watercolor, you'd first put in the blue, and then you'd let that dry, and you'd paint in those green, darker marks on that surface. Yes?
I actually forgot the question.
Oh, I'm sorry I didn't call on you earlier. It's always frustrating. If the question comes back to you, shoot your hand up anytime, and I'll try to call on you more quickly. Thank you. And thank you for being so good about raising your hand. All right, take a look at that dorsal fin shape. You know this one? Yeah?
Humpback.
Boom! How'd you know?
Because of the dorsal fin.
Good, good. There's that mesa shape. So what some people would do is they would see this bump here, and they go like, oh, this must be a blue or something. That's my dorsal fin. But this is my dorsal fin. This whole piece here. All right? So she spotted that mesa-like dorsal fin up to the flat, then down. Right? That's the mesa. Different from this guy.
Gray whale.
Gray whale. So, and what are your clues?
The knuckles shape.
Knuckles. Nice. So in your sketchbook, what you do is you kind of block in the general shape of it. You then kind of work in those knuckles. Then squint your eyes. Look at how much darker this whale is than the water back here. You could color that in. And look at this bottom edge. It comes down here, up in here. So you kind of come down. You just make that kind of rough edge. You feel like you've got a whale in the water. And then you start putting in some other water details around it. Very still water. You can tell it's got a little bit of a wake here. There's some water piling up on this side, so it's not a straight line because the water's kind of sloshing up on it a little bit here, but very, very flat water. All we're getting for water lines are the tiniest little horizontal slits here, even keeping a nice reflection. Notice the reflections are always vertically below the thing that's being reflected. What do you think this is? Oh, yes? Minky it is.
I was going to say that.
You're going to say Minky too? And what was your clue?
Because it's like really smooth. Its back is very smooth black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and what else would you have?
My clue was the half moon.
The half moon. The moonback. Moonback whale. Nice. But notice how by changing the lines that you make in your water, think of what marks would you make to suggest this kind of water texture. You could get part of that by the edge of the whale, and then look at these little marks, just a few little horizontal marks.
You also have a reflection of the dorsal fin in the water, which you couldn't see because of choppiness in the other picture.
Yes. Right? The more still the water, the better the reflections you're going to see. So what are our two whales that make the heart-shaped spout?
Humpback.
Humpback and... Well, I don't know how the minkies look. It'd be interesting to find out. Humpback and gray. So this is one of those.
Wow.
Wow.
That's really awesome.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And very pale back here. Anybody want to guess Humpback versus gray? Yeah?
Great.
I'd agree. Look at this cool water shape here. Isn't that a great one?
Yeah.
Draw that one in your little book, right? What you want to do is just have like kind of a few kind of go-to watermarks. You drop those in your foreground. People like go, oh, it's water. Yeah.
The water right around where the whale is reaching looks green too because of the gray underneath it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's a very subtle observation. If you just did this all blue, it would look like it's swimming through paint. You know this one? What do you think?
I'm Minky because of the crescent.
Oh.
That's what I was.
We've got to get these guys whale watching,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Yep, we got to get this team whale watching. That's really cool. And look at this cool rough edge. And notice, so Minky's a small whale, so we're seeing, remember on the blue whale, you couldn't see all this little detail. And look at how big these waves are relative to it. So the size of the waves that you're putting in, and the size of the splash marks says something about the size of the organism that you're looking at. Pick out one good wave mark in there. And just sort of squint at it and notice small wave marks in the back, big wave marks in the front. This one's tough. And I think it's going to trick some people. But first, just kind of take some time. Try to get several clues. Not just one clue, but try to get several clues. Because there's one clue that might kind of confuse some people. Want to give it a shot?
I think it's a blue one.
And what clues are you looking at?
It just looks really big.
So you get a feeling of size because of this relative to the watermarks. Great. You're right. You're right. Somebody else give me another blue whale clue.
I have one.
Can you tell me?
The skin is so smooth.
Nice. Who can give me another blue whale clue? Yes.
The tail is white, like whitish, kind of grayish white.
Okay, so it's not really black, like say a humpback or something like that. Yeah.
It's that thick, it doesn't taper, right?
Look, yeah, look at how massive this is. So there's no skinny stalk. Tail. Tail. Right? That's blue. Look at this great little watermark here. And also notice we don't really have a clear reflection, but underneath this, that kind of helps set this into the water. That little dark part right there helps set this into the water. Like this little splash here. Right. Oh, we know this one. We don't even have to say. But isn't that? But what's neat is that this isn't like some Hallmark card, rare moment. Oh, look what you got. So how do photographers get photographs like this? They just go out there and point there. When these guys start doing it, you're waiting for you. Wait, oh, there's another one. You'll see them doing this crazy stuff. This isn't just like some trip to Alaska. This stuff is happening all over the place. And if we just do the little bit of work to get ourselves out there, you can have encounters with this amazing wildness.
Yes.
Right? And when you get out there, you cannot help be touched by the beauty, the majesty of it. And what I want you to also do when you're out there is go out there, fall in love with the ocean, fall in love with the world, and then think about what we can do as voting, proactive human beings to help with conservation of the oceans. One of my heroes is Sylvia Earle. She's sort of the Rachel Carson of the ocean. And really active marine biologist and conservationist. My two daughters, Amelia and Carolyn, at night they often ask me to make up a princess story. And these stories always involve two brave and adventurous little girls named Amelia and Carolyn. And then there's some other characters. So they'll like hang out with, a Princess Sylvia Earle. Yeah. Or a Harriet Tubman. Yeah. And so we've got these alt princesses, but Sylvia Earle is one of my alt princesses. And but think about the oceans. They're big, and so we think they're going to take care of themselves. But we human beings have a tremendous impact. And when we decide as a large community to do the right things, we are capable of making the sorts of decisions that make me proud to being a human being. But sometimes there are strong economic forces against those things. And we have to, as a community, come together, motivated by our love of the world, to do those sorts of things, to do the right things, to help our politicians do the right things. Because there are strong economic forces pulling them other directions. Since Citizen United, there's so much money in politics that the voice of community, of human beings, to help politicians do the right thing, they really need our help right now. So I want to encourage everybody to also see what we can do as a community to up our game, as to help our politicians make the right decisions for us. And ocean conservation is a really beautiful, powerful way to make an impact globally. So check out Sylvia Earle and consider that as something that, what can I do about it? Ocean's so big, what can I do? I'm going to invite you to explore that and see what you actually can do to make a difference, because we can, and we are, and we will. Which brings us to the land of cute. All right, are you guys ready for some cuteness?
Yes.
All right, we're going to take a look at seals, sea lions, and otters. All right? When you look at the structure of a sea lion, you can actually see a little bit of kind of the ancestry built into this. They're they are closely related to bears. So this is this bear gone wet, and you turn those feet backwards, right? So this is this water bear running around. So they've got a shoulder, an elbow, a wrist, just like me. So underneath that big flipper, there's a hand-like structure going on, so that it's not a totally alien shape, although it is the worst nightmare for a fish. Right? You can imagine the bear coming at you here, like, but underneath the water, incredibly graceful, incredibly powerful, beautiful things. Whoa, right? Very fast, really acrobatic. This is a sea lion. So sea lions are super flexible and acrobatic. See those forelimbs with the big flippers on them. So this is the skeleton of a sea lion here. This is a seal. So seals and sea lions are different things. These guys, they can take their feet and bring them forward, or they can flop them back behind them like this. Seals, they're much more of an aquatic thing. They're not as good at land. Their feet always stick to the back. So a seal, if it's going around, it can kind of do this, right? Or, but a sea lion can actually get up on its feet, and like you saw that little baby one at the start, and walk around kind of like a dog. Not quite as good at running as a dog, but they can get up and they can move around. The sea lions can also do all sorts of things with their feet. So they can have their feet out at the back like this. They can take their feet over to the side and kind of curl them around. They can flop them up underneath them like this and be up on their flippers. So the sea lion, very flexible. This guy's kind of like a sausage, right? And just sort of sits there, this sort of big bucket of sealosity. Is this a seal or a sea lion?
Seal.
All right. Notice that it's pushed itself up off the ground here.
Oh yeah, it's a sea lion.
Sea lion, yeah. So if they can do that, so we all heard of a circus seal. That's what confuses everybody. Everybody thinks of a circus seal, right? Circus seals. I mean, if there's a circus seal, what would it do? It would like lie there and kind of go, right? Not very active at all. The circus seals are actually sea lions. So this one had its feet back, so giving the back of its body this kind of a contour. Right? This one, also a sea lion, has its feet flopped around the side, giving its body kind of this sort of a contour. Right? If that was facing away from you, you wouldn't see these back feet here. Right? You'd have much more of a squared off angle there. And this is the hand down here. Hey, wait. Yes.
It looks like it's saying hi.
And give me a high. You want to give it a high five? No, I won't. So the back foot, 5 toes, and bigger on the outside, smaller on the middle. And if you get a look at its head, they have ears that stick out on the outside. So sea lions have ears. Yeah.
But seals just have like those, like just small holes in their head.
Give me a fist bump for knowing marine biology. Yeah. All right. She says she's right. So if you look at this, you know. So here's the test for you: seal or sea lion. And how'd you know? What about this dude?
Seal.
Yeah, I mean, so not kind of the. This is an action shot for. So it's doing a side crunch, right? Woo. You see, it's like sea lions. They can climb up on top of big rocks, seal rocks off of the cliff house in San Francisco. There's rocks that have these big marine mammals up on the side of them, right? Seals can't climb up on seal rock. Those are all sea lions on them, right? Sometimes you'll see, you'll walk out there and you'll look out and there'll be this big rock sticking out of the water like this, and there'll be a sausage sitting up on top of it. You're thinking, like, how did that harbor seal ever get up on top of that thing?
High tech.
High tide. Yeah. They got up there and the water was like that. Right? Exactly right. And then it comes down and they go, look what I did. I might want to wait around to get down.
Do you have to wait to get down or can they slide in?
Oh, they often can just sort of roll over. You know, once they're in the water, they're taking those two back feet and going poof, 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 poof. They're really effective, fast swimmers. They can chase down neat fish. But on land, not so impressive. And there's another kind of napping style. Here's a harbor seal in action. See, you can see that ear hole? It's taking a nap. This is called bottling, where they're just going to put their nose up and sleep. Right? So if you see the critter out of the water, like that, all right, so again, notice on the seals, little front feet with some claws, all right? On the back, you have 2 feet that are coming together, little sort of stub there in the middle, 2 feet that come together. The rest of it just kind of looks like a sausage. Right? If you see them in an action pose like this, then you just sort of you draw what you see. You know, whatever nature gives you. Don't think like, oh, I can't draw that because I can't see the whole thing. Ooh, I get to draw the bottling posture. Yes.
The seal before this, the white one with the black polka dots on it. Yeah, that one. What type was it?
These are harbor seals. So most of the seals we have, you're going to see around, are going to be harbor seals. And they can be white, they can be very dark, they also can be peppered like this, kind of the Dalmatian look.
Yeah.
Yes?
I don't have any.
Okay. There's that hole that you were talking about in the side of the head, right? Yeah. So that's its ear. That's the ear. So seal or sea lion? Seal or sea lion? Seal. So these guys are really flexible. Most of the motion happens here on either side of the rib cage or at the base of the skull. And so that means they can do this kind of sea lion yoga. The tail on this guy flipped around the side. So this is a very sea lion body posture. Seal would be out like this with the feet together. So this is a real, just sort of seeing this body come down to a sharp wall there, that's a sea lion thing. So that makes it feel really sea lion-y. So you got seals and sea lions, and then the super cutie of the Monterey Bay area is?
Otter.
Oh. All right. So here's the otter. We're gonna play with otter a little bit. So otter behind the scenes here. Here's its little otter arm. Its body is coming down like this there, so it's floating here in the water. This is flopped over. Its 2 back feet flopped over here with its tail. Got a short little tail that wraps up into there. Let's take a look at. There is a little otter skeleton on its back, and with fur around it, you essentially kind of get the water coming in here. You get a little bit of belly, and then that head sticking out. So the secret to getting your otter drawing to look right is you want to work that otter face. And the secret here is, how do you make your otter not look like a seal? And how do you make your seal not look like an otter? And the secret is going to be in the proportions and placement of the eyes and the nose. So one of these critters, seal or otter, has huge eyes. The other one has small eyes. Who's got the huge eyes? I'm going to go for otter big eyes. I'm going to go for seal big eyes. See, more seal big eyes. So check this out. I'm going to draw 2 heads here. Notice I've got a circle, light circle drawn, with crosshairs over it. This line going across is about 1/4 of the way down. So I'm going to have my eyes near the top of the head here. Now I'm going to put eyes and nose on these. So one of them is going to have small eyes, big nose. The other is going to have big eyes, small nose. Does anybody know which one this one is going to be?
Sea otter.
Seal.
So seal here, sea otter here. So the sea otter, otters are weasels. They're aquatic weasels. And so they've got these tiny little weaselly eyes. These guys have huge eyes for seeing deep underwater in low light conditions. Yes?
Kind of looks like owl eyes. Yeah.
Looks very much like owl eyes. So big owl eyes for seeing in low light conditions. So that's a great connection that you just made. Right? So unrelated critters, but both of the same adaptation. Big eyes, big forward-facing eyes for low light conditions. I agree with you. Right? Now, if we put a little mouth with these and kind of develop our noses, the otter has this big upward triangle nose, kind of like, it looks like a little bit like a Christmas tree. Right? The seal has a small downward-facing nose. This guy has a fairly big mouth, but you don't see most of it. Most of you see of its mouth is a little dark triangle close to the nose. On the seal, you get this big kind of grumpy cat look here. Right? So, and that's, that mouth kind of going around the bottom of his big sealy cheeks. I'll put more head on. Seal, no ears. You get a little bit of, you can just, and this looks just like skin on this. They actually have very small hairs that are right, slick against the surface, but you really don't see them as looking fuzzy. The otter is going to look fuzzy. You can suggest that with a few little lines around the edge and a few little kind of jaggedy lines around some places. Makes that feel a little bit fluffier. Also, notice this. See this little line here on the eye? Sometimes you'll see just sort of otter eyes, you'll kind of get this, you'll get this, you'll sort of see this sort of dark zone at a slant on either side of the otter face, like that. That can be kind of give you an otter look. So my otter, it's going to be fuzzy. My seal's not going to be fuzzy. To suggest the cheeks on these, sometimes I put a little bit of shadow underneath its chin here. That helps you kind of suggest these cheeks. There's sort of a little depression underneath its little ottery cheeks. So, but the secret here is big nose, small eyes, and nose is pretty high. It starts between this here. Notice also on the otter that you can see the ears. The ears, if it's looking straight towards you, are about at the level of the eyes, but if it tilts its head back like this, it can still be looking at you, but now you see the ears as being lower than the eyes. So like this, the ears and the eyes on the same line, tilt its head back, those ears are now lower. Yes, sir?
How do you put the light on the papers?
Oh, I use gray or toned paper, so I just grab a white pencil and do that. So I love, right now I'm really crazy about drawing on toned paper because it's just so much fun to kind of get in there and add a few little white highlights. You're like, I want a wave! Right. Look at this guy. Look at that guy. So you see those, so you've got eyes, nose, little mouth there, and you see that little shadow under here. That gives you the feeling of these puffy cheeks. Yes?
I think it's tilting its head back because the ears are lower.
I agree. I agree. Very good observation.
Almost over here and one is almost over here.
Yeah.
It looks like it's tilting its head that way.
I think you're right. I think you're right. So super cute. Look at the little heart of a nose. Right? So nose up, arrow, nose, whoops, nose down arrow. Up arrow, down arrow. Right? So the little nostrils are right here. The nostrils on this guy are down here and here. And notice here, it's covered with tiny hair, but you don't really see this as being a hairy thing because those seal hairs are so short. Yes?
I see the hair.
Yes, I do too. When they're wet, they just look glossy. So now what I want you to do is to take a look at this and to pick out 3 otter faces. All right? I want you to draw 3 otter faces. And don't take too much time with them. Try to make them sort of, finish them in about a minute or so. Don't make them too big. So 3 otter faces, maybe about this big. And what I want you to notice is that the more you draw them, the more your head is going to start to wrap around otterness. Usually your first sketch of something is a little bit more difficult. Oh, I see some people are writing on their knees. I've got these for you if you want. Here, that'll help. Anybody else need this? This will give your sketchbook a little bit more solidity back in. A little bit easier for you. So the first sketch that you make is usually not going to be your best one. Because the more you kind of go back there, you try again, you take what worked before and you bring that into the next picture. And see if you can notice something that didn't quite come together on that first one. It actually frees you up a lot when you give yourself permission to make several sketches of the same subject, instead of just trying to get it all perfect on that first try. So you try to just, through your notes, you're feeling your way around the otter. You're learning more otterness by those. When I'm sketching in the field, I'll make multiple drawings of any subject. And usually, it's 3 or 4 or more into it that you really start to get the feeling of how does the elephant look? How does the elephant seal look? How does the otter look? Give yourself a little otter face and try another one. This is a different approach than just trying to take all your time, start with one drawing, and keep working with that, and keep working with that, and keep working with that. I just want you to sort of see what it's like. So then, you don't have to finish that first one. Just skip over and try again. And see if you now, as you're going into this next one, you understand otter face. You're starting to draw, already understanding otter face a little bit more. That's really different than having to get it perfect from the first stroke. So from this class, I'm going to give you 4 pieces of homework, but they'll be fun. So number 1 is to draw the cutest seal or otter that you can. All right? Look online, find some reference photos for seals and otters, find a super cute one, and just have some fun with the ridiculously cute critter. And then in the whale department, to make one drawing of a whale as it sort of might appear in a museum or an underwater photograph, this full side view of the whale. Use it as, you get to pick which whale species you want. Like I heard you say, that who likes the sperm whale? Yeah, all right, so you might want to choose a sperm whale for you. We didn't do sperm whales here, but they got this cool, really blocky face. So, or some people might want the sea panda. All right?
I love sea pandas.
I love sea pandas. All right? So you could choose the sea panda, but draw the whale and sort of diagram it as a study to kind of help you kind of think about the parts, how they fit together, just to review your whale anatomy. And so that's 2 drawings. The last two drawings of whales as they would appear at the surface. So draw whales coming up to the surface. It could be the dive, it could be the tail, it could be whatever moment of those sort of progression of views that you get that you're interested in. Pick one of those. It could be when it comes up to spout, it could be that big bump up before the deep dive, it could be the flukes coming up. But draw those and the water around them and explore some of those techniques for water. So 2 whales in the process of coming to the surface and diving. Right? 1 whale diagram and 1 cutie. Right? And that is the end.
Ah.
All right, so thank you very much for coming. I hope that this workshop was really useful to you in helping you be able to draw mammals, and it was going to motivate you to get out and see those in the field.